God of War 4, the game of the year? Nobody with a fucking brain thinks that. I generally liked that game, but this game, Red Dead Redemption 2, as much as shit I've actually talked about this, I've actually made 5 videos titled Red Dead Redemption 2 sucks, because there's a lot of this game that does. However, Red Dead Redemption 2 is a better game in every single way than God of War 4. It's got a better story, it's got better content, it's got better level design, better combat, and shockingly, not only does it have better all of that, it's actually got a better score and better graphics, which is something you could almost never say in comparing contemporary God of War games and Rockstar games. I called God of War 4 when I reviewed it the best looking game on console. That title has been usurped. Rockstar, who's never been known for their graphical prowess, has made the best looking game on console. This game is gorgeous, and this game has a phenomenal score. And one of the things that God of War frequently does well, that Rockstar is blowing them out of the water on, is voice acting. This is the best voice acted game of all time. There's never been a game with better voice acting. This game has superb voice acting. And of course, one way that this game absolutely destroys God of War 4 is in the plot. When I talked shit about Red Dead Redemption 2, I said I don't like the engine. I really hate the inventory system. I don't like the way the horses interact with the environment. I despise the challenges. I didn't even get to all the challenges that I haven't done yet. Like the way the gambling challenges are just luck-based bullshit. And a lot of the shit they want you to be able to pull off with certain weapons is just ridiculously difficult, and that there's a major jumps in difficulty level between individual, challenges. And that, like, some of the earliest challenges are remarkably hard and that you'd never be able to pull off without a guide. The fact that Herbalist 2 requires you to find 4 different kinds of berries, and a couple of those berries only exist in a single place on this massive fucking map, and that I literally beat the entire game and the entirety of the epilogue without ever finding a blackberry, is obnoxious. But those are overall small things in the face of what this game does well. And I never once tried to talk shit at the plot of this game, because this game has a beautiful story that is actually, for once, about redemption. And the quality of this game could not be as high as it was if not for the character of Dutch van der Linde being so dynamic and so interesting, and in fact, having a more expansive arc than any of the other characters in the game, including Arthur Morgan and John Marston. Now, of course, there's going to be some spoilers here, but this game is about 75 hours long. Or at least it was for me. I completed it 88% and played it for about that long. And it took me a long time to finish. And there was a couple of times, especially in the first third of the game, where I was losing interest. I was frustrated. And there's certain things that really hurt the beginning of this game. First of all, the Cattleman revolver is one of the worst pistols to ever be in a video game. In this game, it sucks so fucking bad. It's so inaccurate. It does so little damage. And I really don't particularly like, or didn't learn to get along with until late in the game, the fact that many weapons are, you actually had to pull the trigger, you're the trigger of your controller, to cycle the gun. In an attempt to make the game feel more realistic, there's rifles where you actually have to pull the trigger to work the bolt. And there is many pistols where you have to pull the trigger to work the hammer of the gun. This can be rather confusing, because you think, okay, maybe reloading or cycling the weapon would be something that the game does by itself and that would affect the fire rate of the gun. No, you will fire even slower than a lot of these guns can fire, because it's hard to tell when you're pulling the trigger as in firing a bullet, and when you're pulling the trigger as in cocking the hammer, cycling the weapon. And when the Cattleman revolver is that fucking slow and that fucking inaccurate, it can be incredibly fucking frustrating. And especially when you don't have the real good Deadeye until late in the fucking game, it just sucks dick to shoot at anything for a long time until you get the Schofield. The Schofield revolver with express ammo is all you need to play this game. Or just even the starting carbine, which is better than the Lancaster repeater, if a little less accurate, is all you need to beat this game. There's a lot of guns that suck. The double-barreled shotgun sucks, and the semi-auto shotgun kind of sucks. Really, the pump-action shotgun is the shotgun that matters, and you don't get that till late. So the game withholds a lot of its most effective weapons, yada yada. It's about all I can complain about. But I fucking love the plot of this game. This game's plot is much better than God of War 4's. It's much better than pretty much any game plot that I've played in a decade. I mean, I love the story of this game. There's a little bit of social justice-y shit there, and really the plot sometimes is at odds with Arthur Morgan himself, especially that this game has RPG-ish elements where you can drastically change what Arthur Morgan looks like and somewhat change how he acts. But the game does kind of railroad you into light side, good guy, redemptive Arthur Morgan by the end, and it can be somewhat frustrating. Especially because characters like Micah Bell and Dutch Van der Linde are so interesting that the way I felt about those characters goes up and down and up and down. And there was a pretty expansive part of the late game, of Arthur Morgan's arc anyway, where I honestly thought that Arthur Morgan was being a doubting Thomas. I agreed with Dutch. I was like, you don't have any reason to distrust Micah Bell. I didn't like him early on, but when you start to figure out that maybe a weak point of the story is that all these characters are criminals, all these characters are killers. So if you try to tell me that Micah's crazy, when Micah doesn't do anything particularly different than Arthur Morgan does, or Dutch does, or the fact that there's not a big difference between John and Bill Williamson, or John and Javier Escuela, you honestly start to wonder, is John the traitor? You start to wonder, is John actually a fucking asshole? And that he shouldn't have done the things he did to Bill, and he shouldn't have killed Javier Escuela like a dog in Mexico, when they didn't do anything to fuck with him. They didn't do anything really to betray him other than siding with Dutch. And Dutch had pretty good reason to distrust Arthur Morgan and distrust John Marston. Nothing that Dutch did until the end made him seem like he made poor decisions regarding his own gang. Now, did Dutch Van der Linde make poor decisions regarding what the gang as a whole did? Oh, fuck yes, he did. You finally really get a sense of who this character is. A character who seemed like a rabid madman in Red Dead Redemption 1, but John constantly talked about like he was some sort of messianic cult figure who seemed like he had the right of everything. Well, just about everything Dutch says early on in the game makes a ton of sense, and it is fascinating to watch the loyalty dynamic. That there's multiple opportunities that people have, where there's even a scene outright where the Pinkertons say, we will let you all go if you hand over Dutch, and not one character even thinks about it. They don't blink. They all tell the Pinkertons, get the fuck out, or we will kill you. You will never have Dutch. And guess what? Neither John nor Arthur Morgan ever really turn on Dutch. And in fact, things would have gone better for both of them if they had. But even though they tell Dutch that he's wrong and that they're going to split up the gang whether he likes it or not, and that he's making terrible decisions and they basically mutiny him, they still never would have killed him. They still never would have sold him out. That's what's really interesting about him as a character. And you watch as he goes through a slow, stepped degradation of his character. He starts to lose it first because his plans stop working perfectly. And then he starts to get outsmarted by some villains. And then he starts to get a little bit paranoid. And then he starts to hate how no matter how many fucking big heists he pulls, he can't keep a hold of his money. It either gets lost or it gets stolen or or he gets a bad tip and they don't steal that much money, and he can never seem to get at the money he knows he needs. And that's what starts to drive him nuts. In the ending scene, in the long epilogue, this game locks off half the fucking map. Half of fucking Red Dead Redemption 1 is faithfully recreated and locked until after the main game has been beaten, which is 40 or 50 hours long. It's fascinating. And John Marston's epilogue is fucking long and somehow makes being a rancher feel, I guess, a little bit engrossing. It can be a little bit frustrating how long it takes him to get Beecher's Hope put together. And there's a lot of build shit cutscenes, perhaps a little bit excessive with the cutscenes, but those scenes in the epilogue rehabilitated the character of John Marston for me, because I didn't much like John Marston in this game. I started to really lose faith in what John Marston was doing and started to see him as a completely selfish, manipulative bastard, which is technically what he is in Red Dead Redemption 1. He's not a heroic character, not even compared to Arthur Morgan. Now, Arthur Morgan's beautiful arc was that he learned that his entire life was devoted to Dutch van der Linde, and he has completely lost faith in Dutch van der Linde. And as he gets tuberculosis, and right about the time that Arthur Morgan gets tuberculosis is when this game starts getting good and when the game really opens up its content. You're going to spend a fuckload of time, most of the stranger missions in the game, playing as an Arthur Morgan who is very visibly sick and kind of disgusting. It's unfortunate. But you really see, and it plays out in both, are you fucking serious with the fucking landscapers? You really see him start to change his mind, and I changed my mind about Arthur as I played as him, because fucking he has goddamn tuberculosis, and right about that time is when he starts kind of railroading towards light side shit. But I also was getting really moved by his acting in cutscenes and acting towards other characters, that I literally started changing the way Arthur dresses. Because Arthur is not exactly a blank slate, but you can really sort of change the way he feels by the way he dresses. Wardrobe's always been phenomenally important in the Western genre, and you can really encapsulate the meanness of him if you play him with a long-ass beard and all dirty and Grizzly Adams and the legendary bear hat, and he looks like a monster. Or you can make him as just a really gritty, vicious, good guy character by cleaning him up, putting him in nice suits, or, you know, giving him the white hat treatment, you know, the white versus black hat. And that's what I did. I ended up changing the way he looks into more of a good guy, clean cut, bathing and wearing lighter shade clothes, Arthur Morgan by the end. So that it really, really added a lot to the cutscenes. And, I liked that Arthur chose to sacrifice himself for John, not because he really liked or cared about John, because he really didn't. It was because John represented all the opportunities Arthur never had. John had things in his life that Arthur Morgan held as worth saving, having a wife and child, and that he actually basically vicariously saw his own lost innocence in John, and by rescuing John, he was rescuing himself. And since he knew he was going to die, he felt like he needed to redeem his soul, basically. And that's why, even though he fights a losing battle versus Micah and a losing battle versus the Pinkertons, he still spectacularly doesn't die because he was shot or betrayed or overtaken. He dies because his tuberculosis overwhelms him, and he knows he won, even though Dutch betrays him at the end and he doesn't finish off Micah. He knows that he's won. He says as much. And that was a great completion of his arc. And John Marston eventually sort of gets that kind of arc too, where he does want to build his family life and only barely succeeds in having a happy ending to his story. The problem is that you know how John's story turns out even before you play this game. And I loved the last mission as John Marston because, first of all, that snow gunfight really makes you work in a game that is overall very easy combat-wise. Really does make you work and makes you feel like a badass because it basically takes cover away from you and forces you to really use Deadeye and perhaps even use some of the healing items that you rarely have to use to get through that badass gunfight. In the showdown with Micah Bell was great, and Dutch arriving threw me for a loop because I was so like almost brokenhearted going, you didn't trust Arthur, you know that Micah was the traitor. But then there's this one key little bit of dialogue that you blink and you might miss it, where John sees Dutch and goes, John, Dutch, what are you doing here? And Dutch just looks at John and says, the same thing as you are, I guess. Which means Dutch was there to kill Micah and take the money. But the fascinating thing is Dutch does kill Micah and then doesn't take the money. That was like the last little bit for Dutch. And the thing was, Dutch was right not to take the money, because that's how Dutch gets away and gets to live the last 5 years of his life before Red Dead Redemption 1, because the fact that John takes the money, you find out in the long 35-minute post-credit scenes that that's how the Pinkertons trace John. That's how the Pinkertons find John, is following that money. And also following all the places where John did a piss-poor job of covering himself. I mean, John was fucked from the second he started admitting to being John Marston to people. Idiot. Unlike Arthur, John Marston is a very dumb character, which adds somewhat to his charm, but mostly just adds to the frustration and the shit that John deals with throughout both games. But I really loved that shootout. And the other best level of the game is when Sadie and Arthur Morgan go to rescue Abigail Roberts just before the end. I think it's Annesburg, but it might have been Van Horn. I think that was that was Van Horn, where the big sniper rifle covering scene was a bit of a pain in the ass because Sadie caused me about as many mission failures as any particular death I might have suffered or thing I did wrong. She is a psychopath and has a death wish, and that's in her character and in the way her character behaves in combat. She pushes forward when she shouldn't. She moves past enemy lines and lets enemies get behind her. And she's a liability in every gunfight she's in, which is kind of funny. But I really felt like the fucking wrath of God walking in there dual-wielding Schofields, which are the best pistols in the game, bar none, in my opinion. And just fucking blam, blam, blam. And I did not take cover once walking through Van Horn killing Pinkertons. Because really, you don't have to in a lot of situations. And in fact, it's better to not take cover in a lot of this game. The game makes Deadeye almost a Fallout VATS level advantage and gives you way more Deadeye and way more ability to refill your Deadeye meter than the previous games, which helps a lot because honestly, you're way less accurate in this game. The reticle bob that isn't in Red Dead Redemption 1 makes a big effect here, and it's awesome that the reticle bobs, when you're being shot at and when you're being hit, and how many enemies you're facing with will actually affect your reticle movement and cause you to miss quite a bit. But you don't miss in Deadeye, motherfucker. No, that's just headshot, 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 headshot. And it feels badass to see, like, oh, there's a sniper fucking 120 yards downrange. Blam, you're fucking dead. The scope of the battles in this game is huge and awesome and fun. And makes you feel like a badass. And that combined with the score, which really adds a heavy emotional weight to all the plot and is perfectly arranged. The cinematography, the direction, and the voice acting and the cutscenes make this a movie caliber game. You could get a lot out of just watching cutscene super edits of this game rather than even playing it. That's how good the story is. That's how good the plot is. That's how good the cutscenes are. That's how much value they add. And Jesus, dude, even the motion capture is good. And just the graphics and the environment, the fact that this is a fucking gigantic open world that is filled with stuff to do. Unlike Grand Theft Auto 5, it's not a big world with not much to do but drive through it. That working with herbs, crafting your own weapons, even camping sometimes adds stuff to the game, as you can even be attacked while camping. Fucking fishing is actually fun. I hated hunting at first, and believe me, it stays frustrating due to the poor versus good versus pristine, perfect pelt nonsense. Especially with certain animals that are incredibly fucking rare, like mooses, like panthers, and even cougars. You don't find really good cougar hunting spots until the epilogue, and even then, you only see like 1 or 2 cougars at best per area, and they're frequently not perfect cougars, so you can't even get a good pelt off them, even if you kill them perfectly, and you have to kill everything perfectly. And until you get a wide variety of weapons, it can become a pain in the ass to hunt anything. I mean, that sucks, but it's still dynamic. It's still fun, and it's challenging. You know, fishing and hunting can be actually kind of challenging, and I like that. And the extraneous shit you do is not collect a bunch of toy boats that are hidden really well in this level. It's not that Assassin's Creed level, get all the feathers bullshit. This actually is worth looking around because you can find fuckloads of hidden treasure. You can find most, if not all, of the weapons in the game. You don't have to buy them, you can find them. And there's rare versions of each gun, and you don't have to buy all the pamphlets. A lot of the pamphlets are hidden everywhere, and of course, there's tons of jewelry and fencible shit everywhere. It's worth just wandering around. It's worth it. And I found a lot of the legendary animals without even looking at the map they give you or looking up guides. You stumble across most things that are worth finding organically. That is great level design. That's even better level design than God of War. In fact, it's disgusting that God of War for won any Game of the Year awards. Even though it's a good game, I personally gave it a 7.5 because it had some bad parts to it. So, you know, rather than make this game overly long, and I have attempted to talk about this game at length and needed to trim down what I said, there's a 45-minute cut of this fucking video that I had to throw out because it's way too fucking long. You didn't need me to break down every little thing, because really, you should play this game, and you should beat this game. And as a consolation to my viewers that were proud of me for saying Red Dead Redemption 2 sucks, yeah, dude, the first 15 hours, first 5 to 15, this game sucks. This game takes a very long time to hit its stride. And there were times where I wanted to put this game down and not pick it back up for a while. Another game that is considered one of the best games of all time is The Witcher 3. I've owned The Witcher 3 for about 2.5 years and never beat it because I didn't like the pacing of the game. This game gets great pacing about a third to the half of the way through and keeps that good pacing in a way that The Witcher never does. And The Witcher, its RPG parts of The Witcher 3 are what hurts that game the most. If there was not a level system in The Witcher 3, it would vastly improve that game. And in fact, the only way to play is the level lock, where nothing's below your level. And even that still hurts because the amount of treasure that you can find in The Witcher 3, where you go, I'm level 35, and if I was level 22, I would have really liked to have that sword. That was way better than the sword I had back then, but it's fucking useless now. It's too weak. And the fact that there's too many characters that you go dozens of hours without ever seeing and can forget who they are really hurts The Witcher 3, in my opinion. It hurts the fuck out of that game. This game does not have those problems. It has a huge cast of memorable characters that you won't forget because they come up when they need to come up. They get talked about all the time, so you know what's going on. And there's not 15 fucking plot lines happening at the same time. There's 1 or 2 or 3 at worst. That makes this game a way better story than The Witcher 3. Eat your heart out, fucking CD Projekt faggots. Project Red, whatever the fuck it is. They're great. The Witcher 3 is a good game, but I would not say The Witcher 3 holds a fucking candle to this game, because it doesn't. Unless you just are genre preference. I can understand that much. But it's not as good as this game. Not in voice acting, not in cutscenes, not in characters, not in combat, not in gameplay, not in pacing, definitely. Not even in environment. Not even in graphics. I know, the graphics have advanced and it's not fair, but this game is better. This game's better than The Witcher 3. This game's better than God of War 4. This game's better than any Rockstar game that came before it. And lastly, I'll say tonally, Rockstar finally got dark, grimdark shit right. There's not a lot of levity in this game, and in fact, the few comedy relief characters there are utilized poorly. This game is pretty continuously tense and serious. And the thing is, like games like Grand Theft Auto Vice City Stories sucked dick because of how grimdark they wanted to be. GTA 4 has such a weak story because Rockstar had no idea at that point how to balance funny and satire and balance parody and serious themes and tones. And that game suffers greatly for it. This game got it all right. This is Rockstar's masterpiece, by far. This game is the best Rockstar game since Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. It is so fucking good. It really is, and I really changed my mind about this game. To the point where I think this is one of the best games ever made. So, when I gave God of War 4, and we'll finish with this, I gave that game a 7.5 out of 10. And the way my rating system works is you start at a 5. And as you go, as the game pisses me off, we move towards 0. Every time it makes me mad, every time I see serious flaws in the design of the game or in the combat or pacing or whatever, it moves towards 0. And every time the game really impresses me, it moves towards 10. And we settled about halfway between mediocre and good on God of War 4 because the flaws and sins of that game were so tremendous and egregious that there was no way I would even give it an 8. Even though that game's best parts were 10 level quality, just because you have some 10 in you does not mean you finish at 10. I talked shit about Red Dead Redemption 2 for over an hour and a half. I have 5 videos shitting on it. And after I finally finished the epilogue and got through all the credits, and we're bang, we finished the game, and I'm 88% finished with all of it. I've done a lot of the other shit. If we look at all the times this game pissed me off, and then all the times this game moved me with its story, engrossed me with its combat, immersed me in its world, I would give Red Dead Redemption 2 like a 9.25, maybe even 9.5. As much as the item wheel sucks, as the inventory sucks, as moving around with the horses sucks, as much as it's fucking impossible to have fun being a criminal in a game about being a criminal, the fact that the robbery system sucks, there's a lot about this game that sucks bad. But there's not enough suck to even drop it below a 9 for me. Because this game kept hitting 10 out of 10 quality over and over and over and over and over and over and over, and I had so much fun and loved so much all the missions. The main story missions are the best part of this game, and the main story is very fucking long, and it's almost always good. It's almost always interesting and exciting and takes unpredictable twists and turns, and I was wrong very frequently. Hell, dude, I thought the epilogue character was going to be Sadie Adler. I was so sure they were going to be let you play as Sadie Adler for the epilogue, and was surprised, shockingly enough, that they went with a safe fan service option and switched you over to John Marston. But how could they not, really? But no, dude, this game did enough right to be above a 9. This game can't be given a 10 because it has serious flaws, and it drove me to a literally apoplectic rage multiple times in the first 10 hours. I was furious at this game. I hated this game. I was half ready to fucking stop playing for good because I just didn't want to go through a long campaign that was going to suck that fucking hard. But thankfully, it turns out that the other, 60 to 90% of this game, depending on how you look at it, is the best game ever. So, 9.25 out of 10 probably is my final score. This game fucking rules. This game was worth the wait. And this game blows its predecessors, Red Dead Redemption 1 and Grand Theft Auto 5, out of the fucking water. And this game blows God of War 4 and whatever the fuck you think is a good game this year out of the fucking water. This game has something for everybody. And you will have fun even if you only do the main story. You will have fun if you 100% complete this game. You will have fun if you don't even actually play the game and just fuck around. Because what's awesome is you can go everywhere except for the far west part of the map right away. You could wander straight out of fucking Valentine or the first sort of area and go straight to fucking Lemoyne and hunt gators, dude. That's awesome. And really, maybe there's not a whole lot to do or buy going beyond, but you can get way ahead of everything. You can start experiencing gangs before technically the story introduces you to them. You can get a bunch of gunfights, find a bunch of treasure, get a fuckload of money before really even playing this game. And that's a good thing. So there is opportunity, there's options. It allows for different play styles. You can maybe slightly to the game's detriment, the combat's easy enough that you can play as a turtley cover-based shooter, or you can just wander through motherfuckers with Deadeye. The game lets you make these kinds of decisions, even down to, if you want to be like me, you might even want to make Arthur Morgan overweight for like half the game like I did, because I liked him taking less damage and being more of a tank, less sprinting to cover and more just walking through motherfuckers. And Arthur actually kind of looks good as a big guy. Those are those kind of options, really. The customizability and this game moved me to tears a couple times. Particularly when Arthur gives up all of his money. God, I had $6,000 to lose, but really it was when my horse, Lucky, my was it Mississippi Foxtrotter or whatever it was? I had a gorgeous horse, and I was thinking, whoever the next character is going to inherit all of his guns, all of his money, and his horse, right? Well, you don't get to inherit all of your money. Tilly gets to live rich as sin in Saint Denis on all of the fucking money I earned, which pisses me off. And John did get all of my guns, and it was really poignant to face down Micah Bell wearing Arthur's hat and using what I considered Arthur's custom gun, my custom-made Schofield revolver, to kill the motherfucker. That was great. But my horse, Lucky, my horse dies in the last mission. And Arthur actually takes the time when he's on the run for his fucking life to stop and hold Lucky's head when Lucky dies. And I go, that's my $1,000 horse. That's my $1,000 trusty horse. That's my horse. As much as I cussed out that horse throughout this game, I was fucking upset that they killed Lucky. And Elmo, my American Standard bred, even though Elmo was stabled for all of this, Elmo's also lost to history. And I'm just having to relearn to like Rachel, John's new basic horse, because at least they give John one of the top 3 horses in the game just for joining Getty's farm. That's nice. So I was going, oh, okay, this horse is almost as good as my Foxtrotter was. All right, that's fine. But I felt fucking the wrath of God coming at the Pinkertons in Van Horn. I felt like death itself coming, like fucking the hand of justice, the wrath of fucking God coming after Micah Bell in the mountains in the last mission. And I felt sad when characters died, and some of them have almost a Departed level, just bam, they're gone, and some of them you have to know that they're gonna die and that they're fucked, and there's nothing you can do about it, like Micah, or not Micah, Hosea. And some characters die very abruptly, like Sean and Lenny. I mentioned there's spoilers. And you knew that only a few people were getting out of this. And I was surprised that a few people that I didn't think would made it out of it. But you know that Javier gets to Mexico, Dutch disappears, and Bill Williamson forms his own gang. And Bill Williamson, who was one of the nastiest characters in Red Dead Redemption 1, was just as loyal and hardworking and honest as any other member of his gang in this game, and it actually made me sick to think of how Javier Escuela dies like a dog in Mexico, and he didn't deserve it any more than Dutch deserved it, or actually less than Dutch deserved it, maybe less so than Arthur, maybe less even than John, depending on how you play him. You find out that John wasn't so righteous in that game, and this game really was about the fate of killers. You know that Dutch doesn't get away. You know Arthur doesn't get away. You know eventually John doesn't get away. And that only a few characters have the real chance at redemption. And a lot of the characters, even though they were heading towards their fate, their darksome fate, they did redeem themselves. And this story is just that fucking good. I am doing it poor service trying to explain how good this story is. This is story-wise one of the best games of all time. And this is content-wise, how much you get for $60, one of the best games of all time. This is the best sandbox game of all time. Maybe tied with Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. This is so fucking good. 9.5, 9.25 out of 10. And I'm sorry to all the people who hate this game and were glad I hated it at first. All I got to say to you guys is keep playing. It gets better. It starts slow. It starts bad. But by the end, it's 10 city. The road is paved with 10 out of 10s the rest of the way through. And the game almost redeems itself. Not quite. But it almost redeems itself by the end. Buy this fucking game.